Thank you very, very much, my friend Adam. We call Adam the award-winning PRO. Eh?
The famous ULS.
The famous ULS award-winning PRO. Thank you very much, my friend Adam, and you're welcome, listeners. Um, it's a beautiful day. We are blessed with an expert in an area which we need now, oil and gas sector in Uganda, opportunities and challenges, the role of the lawyer. Now, many of you and many of us have gone back to law school and have done this master's in laws. And then we are wondering, did we take the right decision? And that is why we need this conversation today. Why this topic is very important now is the production commercially of our oil is eminent. The president has now and again said our oil is ready. So that's why this conversation is very key at this moment. And why it matters is this is an industry which is a multi-billion-dollar industry. When you look at Tilenga, Kingfisher, and the ECO project, so to say, we are talking about a multi-billion-dollar project. Then we're also looking at the impact on the environment. Yeah, the impact on the environment, land, contracts. It's a myriad of things. And the lawyers in this process are not only advisors, but they shape policy, compliance. In the recent past now, technology has also come in. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's the reason why Legotech Dialogues this time around sourced the very, very busy panelists and yet very resourceful and knowledgeable in the area. Off the cuffs, I've had a casual conversation, and you'll be amazed. The gentleman we have today, how he decides to turn his passion and shoot for it, and then he sets an example for many of us. So, ladies and gentlemen, the guest I have today requires no introduction. Today we are being blessed by Advocate Dennis Kusasira. You can't talk about Dennis Kusasira and you miss out Abmac Associates. Dennis Kusasira is a founding partner of Abmac Associates. Dennis holds a master's of laws, specializing in energy mining from the University of Dundee. Must have had a good time in Dundee. Scotland is such a beautiful place.
Very cold.
I love the trees, you know, those
And the hay.
and the edge, yeah. So Dennis holds a master's specializing in energy mining, can craft it as energy per se, from the University of Dundee. He has a postgraduate diploma from LDC, But most importantly, Dennis has constantly been highly ranked by Chambers and Global, IFR 100 for his work in energy. And his LLM from the University of Dundee is with a distinction, where he focused on policy, among others. Dennis has represented this country on very high-end projects. One of the most popular projects, Dennis, which at law school we kept looking up to, is the school project. Osukulu.
Osukulu. Sukulu.
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 Yeah, we refer to Osukulu because the village is called Osukulu.
Osukulu.
So,
A cave. It means a cave.
it means a cave. Okay. So you tell us about what happened to the four shepherd projects. We expected to be having,
It's up and running.
oh, that's nice.
Up and running.
So the topic today is simply we're looking at what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and how can a lawyer position himself to benefit from these opportunities. Then this show is dedicated to helping the legal industry because we are so many, and specialized areas like what you have set up is not an area many of us have got to know how to go about it. And it's a pleasure having you today. Not long ago, your area was discussed to be having 6.5 billion barrels of oil have been discovered in the country. We have seen local content regulations where you're saying, the local man should also be part of this whole process. We have also seen a growth in auxiliary services, insurance, logistics, and so on. So Dennis, before we go to start questions on this segment, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you. And there is no better person to say who Dennis is than Dennis himself. So Dennis, you're welcome. In one or two words, tell us, who does Dennis describe himself to be? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. My name is Dennis Kusasira. I'm a very humble lawyer in town. I practice with Abmark Associates, a firm which has 5 partners that focus on different things, but all converging towards natural resource practice. I think even the topic is oil and gas, but oil and gas is so limiting. That's why even you're asking me about Sukulu project, which is a mining project. Yeah. So I will not restrict myself to oil and gas. I'll try to talk about the extractives industry, because maybe members want to know more than oil and gas. But I'm an advocate. I did my law degree from Kampala International University. I've always been a daredevil. I've been a pioneer in most of the schools I've been, including the law school at KIU. I was a pioneer there. And yeah, LDC. Law school, I think I finished 2006. LDC, then the University of Dundee, Master of Laws in Mineral Law and Policy. But focusing more on mining, but a little bit, not a little bit, substantially also on oil and gas and electricity. But when I start to practice law, I focus too much on mining actually than oil and gas. But I've also done a lot of oil and gas work. But my passion really is mining law, which I find very interesting, and I would encourage many people to look at than oil and gas. You know, oil and gas is very competitive and very difficult to penetrate because you have very few players in it. In Uganda, you have only 2 companies doing the upstream value chain, which I'll get to know about the value chains. But whenever you talk about oil and gas, people think about the most obvious value chain, which is upstream. We will go into that. So I focus mainly on mining, but I've also done a lot of oil and gas work across the entire value chain. I do a lot of advisory work, but I'm also a very able litigator, which I also need to talk about, that many people want to talk about being a transaction lawyer and avoid litigation.
Is it possible to completely be a transaction lawyer and you?
It is possible, but you won't be complete.
I hear you.
It's possible. I have colleagues who do all transaction through and through.
Wow.
But I'd encourage lawyers to actually combine, because there's a lot of experience that comes with litigating that feeds into structuring of deals and drafting contracts. Because you know, you draft these documents, but their taste is not in you who has drafted them, but the person interpreting them. So understanding how, you know, courts approach interpretation of documents, interpretation of contracts, you know, understanding whether what you are drafting actually is enforceable. It takes a lot to also know about the practice of law in the courts. And also, you're not going to chase away your client when there's a dispute, and then you say, "Oh, I am only a transaction lawyer, so you can't."
So you've been managing me for the last 4 years. When the dispute comes, says, "I think."
Now, and we shall see that with oil and gas now, you're probably going to enter into an area of heavy disputes. Contrast to what we've been doing in the past. So, in brief, that's me, Dennis Kusasira, an advocate, oil and gas, mining, energy lawyer, acting mainly for projects. I act mainly for private sector. I don't act for government. I do not act for parastatals. I act for private sector. I'm a married man with 3 children. 2 boys, 1 girl.
Wow. Wow. You know, I love the way, the humbleness, how you place these very complex things. Without being generic, I want to ask you, Dennis, to the listener out there, to the young man who has just left law school. The last time I checked, oil and gas was not among the course units at undergraduate. We only see it. You know, mining, oil and gas, extractive industry, so to say, is not part of what is being taught in law school today, apart from when you're doing an LLM. So to our listeners, who are actually our biggest listeners here, the young lawyers, could you just take us through the difference between the things? Because we tend to mix them. And when we hear oil and gas, we think it's the same as mining. We see, you know. So could you just give us an overview on what mining, oil and gas, energy, so that we you know, we limit the cocktail. Thank you.
Okay. I think it is fair to say natural resources. Natural resources, law and practice. And then the natural resources, we divide them or kind of compartmentalize them and say we are now talking about the non-renewable extractive industry. Because natural resources is very wide. It includes fish, forests, fish, forests, water, even spectrum in telecom.
Really?
This is natural resource. So let us restrict ourselves to the non-renewable natural resources that are extracted from the ground in methods not including fishing. And we say in the extractives we have got two main branches. One is mining. Another one is oil and gas. Mining deals majorly with the solid minerals. If you open our constitution and you look at Article 244, they talk about mineral resources. Now, mineral resources include oil and gas, they include minerals. The minerals, we are normally dealing majorly with solid minerals. And solid minerals include what you commonly see. Sand. Sand is a mineral. Clay. Marram. Granite, the stone for making the tarmac road. But now these ones, they're a bit special because they are not vested in the state. They pass with the land. So there's not much controversy around them. But somebody can make a very big practice out of that as well. As a section of natural resources practice. You've seen a lot of Turkish companies setting up bricklaying using the concrete brick. Yeah.
I've seen
acting for them.
I've seen recent many Chinese companies looking for rocks around.
Who is representing the landowners whose stone is being exploited?
The opportunities there you are.
So you are asking me about opportunities. That's why I'm saying don't look at oil and gas alone. There are other things that are just low-hanging
fruit, so to say.
So mining has got what we call the construction minerals, which I've just talked about, and it has got the other minerals that are vested in the state that you cannot claim ownership of, even if you are the landowner. People talk about only gold. Whenever they talk about minerals, they say, gold, you mean gold? No. Gold is just only one of them, but there are minerals such as gold, tin, tungsten, phosphate that you are talking about in Sukuru, coal, which is an energy mineral, and others. I can't bore you with so many of these because why should I mention these things? You just need to only know solid minerals versus non-solids. We have non-solids which fall in the mineral sector, like uranium. They are like kind of gaseous. But basically for a beginner, just know that when we talk about mining, we talk about solids. When we talk about oil and gas, we are talking about petroleum and gas. Petroleum and gas. And these two sectors are governed by different laws. So if you want to practice mining, you're going to be looking at totally different laws. The Mining Act. And if you want to practice oil and gas, you're going to be looking at totally different laws also. And that takes me to the next kind of intro. We have what we call the value chain.
Yeah.
The value chain. I think this value chain term is common.
Yeah.
What is the value chain? If you don't understand the value chain of something, you cannot spot the opportunities in it.
No.
So the oil and gas value chain has, let me start with what people know very well, downstream.
Downstream, upstream. We are in the desert. We have no idea.
In the desert. So we have the upstream, midstream, downstream. The downstream is the one you have seen since you were a child. Petrol stations.
Okay.
Petrol stations. When you go to fill your car.
Yeah.
The person who is selling the petrol station is in the downstream sector. Who is selling fuel at the petrol station is in the downstream. LPG, liquefied natural gas that you use for cooking in those cans. This is downstream. So that is the trading either by wholesale or retail of refined products. So the upstream is what everybody who is talking about oil and gas thinks is oil and gas. When they say Dennis is an oil and gas lawyer, they say, oh, so he's reacting for the people who are looking for the oil.
Yeah.
So the people who are looking for the oil, they are in the upstream.
Oh.
So some people, when they say downstream, they think those are the ones who are getting it from down.
That's how the terminology is confused.
No,
yes, yeah.
Upstream. In environmental law, you had the upstream and the, is it riparian?
Yeah.
Riparian or something? So it's the origin that is the upstream, where they originate from. So companies like Total Energies, E and P. Total Energy is EP. Exploration and production. Exploration means you are searching. If you are doing exploration, you are searching for the resources. And that term also is there in the mining sector. They will give you an exploration license. Go and see whether in that area that is specific there is oil or there are minerals. When you find them, you try to evaluate. You evaluate and see whether they can be commercially produced. You can find them, but it's not economically viable.
Yeah.
So you'll find them and leave them there. Like Ugandan oil was found long ago, but was not commercially viable because the oil prices were too low. So the costs cannot justify, the revenue cannot justify the cost. But as these are non-renewable, as oil becomes scarce and scarce, even the frontier jurisdictions like Uganda, which has so far off the coast, become viable. But also, as populations grow, they occupy the areas that were hitherto not occupied, and they create markets. So you find, if Uganda has its oil, it does not necessarily need to export it if it has got enough internal market in the country itself or in the neighboring countries, Rwanda, Burundi. Yet previously, maybe in 1930 something, very few people were driving, so who's going to consume this? But now many people are driving, they have invented the LPG, many people are cooking using gas. So that makes sense for coming to these stranded assets to look for them and produce. So that is upstream. You evaluate. After evaluating, you now put facilities and produce the oil in crude form. And then The midstream is the processing of it, from being crude to usable products like gasoline, diesel, kerosene, jet fuel, and other refuse that are later on incorporated into other substances to make plastic, to make petroleum jelly, to make car tires, and what have you, rubber. So a lawyer is going to be an oil and gas lawyer, but may decide to focus on the upstream side of things, like I've done. I've focused so much on upstream and midstream side of things. Tilenga project is an upstream project. Kingfisher is an upstream project. And I've acted for Total for donkey years. But I've also done a midstream, refinery, pipeline that transports the crude oil from where it is produced to the coast where it's going to be exported. That pipeline also is a midstream project. The ECO project is a midstream project. So a lawyer can tell you that is focusing on oil and gas, but is so much into the midstream side. And in the mining sector, it's also the same. You have got to explore the minerals. You have got to evaluate whether they can be commercially produced. You have got to produce them. And then after producing them, you've heard our president saying, we want value addition. It means now, for minerals, you're not going to necessarily refine. Some minerals don't need refining, others do. But the process is mine, concentrate. After concentrating, some of them, after concentrating them, they are used directly wherever you want to take them. Like if you do granite as a stone, not all of it, you get a granite stone, but it is not all of it is good granite. So you're going to trim it and remove the bad stuff and get the hard granite, and then sell to this Turkish man who is doing concrete bricks to crush and do stone dust, and then So that one doesn't go through a smelting process. Smelting is only for metals. You get the metal liberated from its rock, and then after you refine it to purity. So somebody can say, I am in the mineral sector, but I act for smelters, I act for refiners. What do you do for them? I draft for them contracts for purchase of mineral concentrate. I draft for them contracts for selling of what they have smelted to refiners. I'm acting for refiners of minerals to draft contracts to sell what they have refined to a manufacturer who needs this intermediate product to produce, say, iron bar, to produce a gold chain. So, and another one can say, I'm in the oil and gas sector, but in the downstream, I am acting for Shell or Vivo. And what do you do for them? I am negotiating for them land leases for petrol stations. I'm negotiating for them franchise agreements to authorize the owner of the land to run a petrol station as a franchise. I am advising them on tax. I am doing employment law for them. I'm a litigator for them. So you can see, I told you the oil and gas is not the oil and gas petroleum law alone. It is really so multifaceted. So that is the value chain: upstream, midstream, downstream. You can be a lawyer in all those value chains. You can decide to focus on only one value chain. You can focus on two. You can you choose what you want to do.
That is very, very enriching, Dennis. And you sweep us off the floor. First, for starters, you entered this industry over 14 years ago. You decide to go to Dundee when oil had not yet been discovered here, and the mining was not the thing. So you know, you are very enviable, and we are really very excited to have you. So don't get tired of us, because this knowledge is not everyday knowledge in this area. I can promise you, because for the lawyers out there who are every day sitting and wondering, what should I be going into? I think you have broken the ice. So, listeners, you're on Lego Tech Dialogues, and we are having Dennis Kusasira, a senior partner with Abmac. Dennis has an experience of over 14 years practicing, natural resources, if I can be able to, to put it in one factor point. And, why we need this conversation, we are speaking to a person who entered this industry with passion. We can literally say that you are the grandmother of this industry in this country, because you unpack it with a lot of ease, and no wonder you have been in it for quite a while. And ladies and gentlemen, I think for me, my take home in your key conversation for a lawyer who is looking for opportunities in this industry is saying, look, have you taken a leap feet to find out if you can be able to do leases for some of these companies, for their petrol stations? Have you tried to go to Shell, Rubies? I mean, they're mushrooming everywhere. Petrol City, to see who is doing their franchise agreements. Have you tried to see if you go into an extra mile and just see these Chinese who are busy knocking down rocks in these different places? Have you gone to see who sold and what rights probably could be there? And I think for me, Dennis, you spotlight something which is really very, very key. Many lawyers are struggling, for lack of a better word. There are no jobs. But it's on conversations like these ones that you open eyes to that advocate who has a PC seated with at home and wondering what to do next. But the very advocate, there is a rock a Chinese is hitting next, So and my other take home in this conversation is that we should not only focus on oil and gas. There's so many things around us that fall in natural resources and which need a lot of legal advice. And I will want to pick it from there. You have unpacked the fact that apart from what is encrypted in our minds, thinking that, we are supposed to be drafting agreements, okay? You give us another angle of looking at things. And I would want to now take you to the Itlenga Eco Project. Many law firms, when you find on their headed paper, it is generic, oil and gas. But I can tell you, you'll move in a number of these firms, they have not even drafted even a single agreement for the last 20 years, or a contract, or reviewed or advised on oil and gas. But it's prestigious to have it on headed paper, oil and gas. Now, it's right there that I want to pick a question. How can law firms, from where you sit, strategically position themselves to benefit from the local content as envisaged by the regulations, to position themselves for ECOP, for example, to say, hey, I think on addition to ABMAC, We can have diamond advocates there. They seem to know what they are doing. How can law firms position themselves? How can lawyers position themselves? Apart from going to Makerere and I have an LLM in oil and gas, going to UCU and have oil and gas. What are those things in your practice of 14 years you think a lawyer who is aiming into oil, gas, the mining industry, and natural resources needs to blow tick? Thank you.
Okay. So the grandfather of oil and gas actually is not me. I could be somewhere closer to them, but I think Honorable Erika Ruhanga is the first person to really venture into oil and gas practice, and tribute to him. The only difference is that he did his oil and gas by practice. And he's a very agile man, although now he has grown old. But for me to be able to compete with him, I had to go and study. Otherwise, I have no audience. So I had to go and study the degree and then come back and pitch and use the advantage of the degree plus age. Because he was growing old, and I knew that with time, obviously, he will be overwhelmed. Like I will be overwhelmed soon, and I encourage people to take keen interest. Now, I think it's not good to brand yourself what you are not. You can still do oil and gas by not trying to brand yourself what you are not. Because I told you oil and gas is a very multifaceted industry. And you don't need to have drawn oil agreements for you to say you've done oil and gas work. There are lawyers who are very good at finance, something called project finance. I do project finance very well, but because I act for projects, I can't act for lenders. I'm conflicted.
I hear you.
So why do you want to prime yourself as oil and gas, yet you're actually a project finance person? They will look for you, Steve. The oil and gas people will look for you to do the financing work, to play the role of lenders counsel. Because these projects, at one point, they require financing. Most especially the midstream ones, like the ECOP. The upstream ones rarely borrow. They rarely use bank money. Why? Too much risk. The bank is not used to taking that kind of risk. The oil is in the ground, you say it is there, but I don't know whether you're telling the truth.
And you're asking for millions and
you want
billions of dollars.
And
you know?
please, we cannot give you this money. So they are always financed off the balance sheet. That is why small companies can't. That's why you and me cannot purport to hold an oil and gas license in our names as individuals, even if the law does not limit. We don't have that money. But a company like Total will have that kind of money, and they can finance off their balance sheet exploration, development, and production in billions. But for the facilities like the pipeline that is transporting, the banks can come in because there's a tariff to charge, so there's a stream of income, and structured in what we call ship or pay. Ship or pay. You pay when you ship, you pay when you don't ship.
Oh. Wow.
To guarantee cash flow. So again, they link it back to who is shipping. If they don't ship, do they have money to pay? So I don't want to go into that, it's too detailed. But I've shown you that you now can have a law firm that is very good at advising financiers of projects, advising in an oil and gas project, not necessarily drafting production sharing agreements,
Yes.
or helping companies out to get licenses. Okay? So, I don't want to believe that only ABMAC does this work, because these companies actually have panels. And you should do, the lawyers should to be encouraged to find out how do you get onto the panel of these companies. What can you offer? Don't go there, you can offer oil and gas, because it's too generic, as you said. But if you're a very good employment law practitioner, go there. These people employ so many people. So many. So they are bound to have employment disputes. You don't need to say I'm an oil and gas lawyer for you to earn that money from Total or Sinok or whoever. The other thing is, you need to understand the industry. Who are the players in it? You may be focusing on Total, but Total is not the one even doing the work. Total only holds a license. And it has hired another company like Slambaje to do the drilling. So it's Slambaje that has the work. But you are chasing Total. It may have hired a transporter, Bolore. He's transporting equipment from Mombasa to wherever. But for you, you are so fixated on chasing the license holder. But first understand this industry and how it operates. Who are the players in it? You can find a company like True North. These are outsourcing companies. They provide workers. You find the oil company saying, we don't want to hold workers on our, so give us workers. So now, if you are an employment law practitioner, you are chasing Total, but it's not even Total providing the workers. So the first thing lawyers need to do to position themselves is to actually understand the industry. What is its structure? They have broken it down.
Yeah.
Then who are the players in each of these segments of the value chain? So if I'm talking about upstream, who are the players? Who am I targeting?
Yeah.
And we can talk about the players. You have the government. Who is the license? Who grants the license? Are you going to pitch the government? Maybe not. They have the Attorney General and internal legal officers.
Yes.
Okay? So don't waste your time going there to ask for, except you can go to the national oil company, because it's an oil company like Total and like any other. Then you have got the landowners or occupiers.
Yeah.
Have you tried? Why are you chasing only the oil company and there is a landowner who is impacted? They are coming onto their land and they're going to be displaced, but they have no representation. They are the service providers. Someone who has been given a contract to transport equipment. That's a player in the oil and gas. So understand the value chain and who are the players in that value chain. Then you will be able to know who to target as a client. And some of them are your fellow countrymen who have been given contracts because of those national content or local content regulations that require that kind of work. to be done by Ugandans. Telecommunication. MTN will supply telecommunication services to oil companies in their base camps. I know companies that do catering in the base camps. What can you do for them? So that is the key. The other one is build capacity. And build capacity means don't go there as a sole practitioner and you think you're going to get work from these people. One man, law firm, no way. You can't get anything. Build capacity by working as partners. Five partners plus some other lawyers. Then you give confidence that you can actually turn around the work. But if you go there with your court and one man, if you're sick, then what do? The other thing is attain the relevant skills. If you only know litigation and you're going to say, I want to do litigation for you, they will tell you we don't have any litigation work. The other one is work ethic. And that is actually more important than the other two that I mentioned, work ethic. What is your work ethic? Are you the guy who receives an email and you keep quiet? No acknowledgement, no response. You're not responsive. Are you the guy who turns out emails that have a lot of typographic errors? Are you the guy whose phone is off? They're looking for you, phone is off. You come late to work, but you want to act for multinationals. It's very difficult because they are not used to that kind of lukewarm service. And you are competing with their lawyers in Europe. And the lawyers in Europe work like machines. So your building capacity is not about getting your LLM degree. It's not enough. That's just something to put you on the table. You say, okay, we can listen to you. But remember, your oil and gas is maybe taught in Dundee like mine. But they were not teaching you Ugandan law. Yeah. So now when you go there with your degree, they're going to ask you questions about Ugandan law. and you're not going to keep singing that you have a master's degree in oil and gas. That's not what they're looking for. Yeah. So the master's degree can give you, it's like a tag. They say, oh, that guy who is putting on a cape can enter. The rest can wait. But when the guy with the cape enters, they find out that the guy is actually hollow. They say, get back, maybe can listen to another person. So it will give you an advantage to be listened to, but you can't hide away from the fact that you are not knowledgeable, the fact that you are not presentable, yes. You are shabby, you have poor English, you don't know the law, even if you purport to. You don't know the industry itself. You don't know even where the Petroleum Authority is located, the regulator, but you want oil and gas work. So building capacity is much more than going to study. You alone, in your sole practitioner law firm, won't get a chance, but team up with others who do different things that all together can service a person in this sector. But if all of you are bringing on table litigation as the unique selling point, maybe you come later. Because also less litigation is done in this industry. Most of it is arbitration. So building capacity also includes building skill in arbitration, but also their arbitrations are not local, they're international. So again, you will find that if you're going to do arbitration in oil and gas, then again you say, who am I going to act for? There are local arbitrations here. Local service providers are entering contracts with oil companies at all levels, a contractor, subcontractor, number one, subcontractor, level 3, whatever. And they have maybe arbitration clauses, and you can start with the domestic arbitration and, okay, you are an arbitrator. Or you do arbitrations as a lawyer. So that's also building capacity.
You know, Dennis, you make this conversation so simple, and yet you are dealing with very complex things. You unpack so many things in a very simplistic manner, and I want to thank you for that. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Lego Tech Dialogues, and we are hosting Dennis Kusasira, Senior Partner, ABMAC. And I'm your host, Galandi Tonekire. It's a beautiful day. I think for this segment, without contradiction and repetition, I just want to highlight, I think for me, my take home, and which I guess could be your take home too. Dennis says preparation is key. You know, in Uganda, oli muchafu, totally prepared, totally, you have no idea of the industry you actually want to go to. And I think it's a problem many times, because many times we don't prepare, we don't understand our clients actually before approaching them. And for me, that is a springboard conversation for many of our colleagues, including myself. Because we sit in these boardrooms and we are making plans, and the thing is, we want to get a retainer from Total, from Shell, without first of all understanding what are the problems of Shell, what are the problems of Total per se. And I think you bring a very, very ready conversation when you ask us, can you understand the industry? And two, the industry provides so much for everybody. Can you get to know where you fit? Is it going to be employment? Do you need to chase, like you're saying, do you need to be chasing Total when in actual sense you could focus on the transporter barrel, or the extractor, or the landowner? And I think for me, that in itself is the first pitch. Why should we be focusing on running into the offices when there are lots of people who are saying, you know, they took my land, they never compensated me. You know, government said it would compensate us. Up to now, we have not received the money. That can be a starting point. So I really want to thank you, because the topic is challenges, opportunities, and the role of the lawyer. And you are clearly doing us justice. And I'm sure my colleagues who are here and friends are really taking it home. I want to recognize the Vice President, Uganda Law Society, Anthony Asimwe. I also want to recognize Chizito. You're welcome, and thank you very much, plus the rest of the people. I can see Aisha Naiga, you know,
boss.
Your boss is right here, just ensuring ABMAC is being represented properly. Yeah?
And that I'm not disclosing confidential information.
I hear you. Thank you very much for that particular segment. And I would want us to look at the third licensing round. You know, we have heard of the third licensing round, 2020, 2026, 2027. Tell us, what is this third licensing round, which is, you know, scheduled for 2026, 2027, and what kind of legal work does a new licensing round generate for a lawyer, you know?
Okay. So licensing in the natural resources works in two ways. In the mining sector, you have a lot of direct applications. And I encourage lawyers to look more at mining than oil and gas, by the way, because there are many players than oil and gas. They're not big companies, but they're there. So you approach the government, identify an area, you apply, they give you a license in the solid mineral sector. In the oil and gas, even the solid mineral, you can get, you can have competitive bidding, but only for in very exceptional circumstances where government already has a lot of information on a mineral asset. Like you've heard of Kirembe?
Yeah, sure.
I think that was licensed through competitive bidding, while others like the Sukulu that I worked on, these Mayuge projects of rare earth, most of the mining companies I worked for, they just walk in and apply for licenses. Now for oil and gas, the grand norm is competitive bidding, because oil and gas is more complex in terms of managing than mining. And minerals are found almost everywhere, but oil is not. So you have many people applying for licenses in mining, so many that if you made competitive bidding the general rule, you will not license anyone, because you will be overwhelmed in trying to run competitions and preparing information packs and what have you. But in oil, for example, in Uganda, it's confined in the Albertine Graben. That's where it is, and the government demarcates into blocks and does work, and then says this is ready for licensing, and they now say licensing round. It's because they get an area, demarcate it into what we call acreage in blocks, and they license to specific companies that they are very sure are capable of doing what they want to be done in that block. So in Uganda, we have got competitive bidding as a grand norm, and the government does it periodically. So when they say the third one, I don't know whether this is the third one. It could be more than, could be beyond third. So they will apply, if you look at the petroleum law, they will advertise, and companies interested will put in their bids, and then those companies will be assessed. So what is the role of the lawyer there? That is now purely oil and gas, because it's more to do with advising them on how to prepare their bids to be compliant with the petroleum law, and not technically but legally, because for me, I don't know petroleum. I'm not a petroleum engineer or a geophysicist or a geologist, but I know that the law says a bid must look like this by law, and the law says you must have national content, and this is what the regulations national content say. So not so much there. Not so much there. But if you are lucky and your client is selected and they are awarded a license, then you now start corporate setup, advising whether they should be a branch or subsidiary. Now that's company law. What informs them to be branch versus subsidiary? Maybe it's tax law. Maybe it's investment treaty protection. Now I told you that oil and gas is almost everything. Now I'm talking about company law, I'm talking about bilateral investment treaties, I'm talking about double taxation agreements, I'm talking about
Wow.
Which
Wow.
becomes, should I be a
Wow.
branch? Should I
Wow.
be a subsidiary? Should I be? Okay. So you'll get work for setting up, then now they will begin looking for premises, then now we're going to tenants agreements. So now that's land law. Then they want employees, and some of them are local employees, so you have employment contracts, but also they have immigrant workers, so immigration. So it is not negotiating PSAs. In fact, you will not negotiate any PSA because you have a model. A model petroleum agreement. I don't know how many people have tried to go and download the model petroleum agreement. Some terms are negotiable, some are totally not negotiable. So if your client is selected, then you have a client. So at that rate of bidding and licensing, we don't do a lot, and we are trying to facilitate the client to be able to get selected and awarded a license so that we can get now a client. Because the person who is bidding is really prospective. You will do some work for them, but don't expect too much because there is nothing they have acquired. And there is nothing you have acquired, and the work of a lawyer is quite limited. You don't deceive yourself. You're not going to negotiate any PSA.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to our second segment. And I want to thank you, Dennis, for doing justice to the opportunities. And I'm sure many of the people here are looking forward to exploring these opportunities. Just like any other industry, I presume that this sector is no exception. We trust that there are challenges here and there. I will take an example of our setting here, our land tenure system. So we know there are land acquisition issues along the way. We also take cognizance of our digitalization process problem. Just today, I think 2 days ago, one of my associates, Rhoda, was telling me that, the client has a title, but they're saying the coordinates are not in the system. So, so we know there are those challenges. But also, that notwithstanding, we equally know that there have been issues of environmental compliances. We have had demonstrations left and center against some of your clients. So we would want to look at the impact, and we have also had cases where we hear that some of these are sponsored by big environmental activist companies. So, and that's takes us to the lighter part of this segment, which is actually the last part of the segment. We are 15 minutes past 8. So we have been talking about the litigators. You know that our legal system and our training is adversarial in nature. I was discussing with the deans of of law schools, including the one of KIU, and we have cracking a joke. He says that we deal with minds and then we don't teach lawyers psychology. So we are litigious animals by nature. So I'm looking at people like Nicholas, who are so passionate about litigation. And the question is, in your sector, what, like in this area particularly where you have advised, what are the most litigated issues? So,
There is less litigation in the oil and gas, particularly between companies that are involved. But there could be litigation coming from landowner disputes, access to land. And there is also litigation from the environmental compliance side.
Yeah.
But most of the time, these companies try as much as possible. By the way, these companies follow very strict standards when it comes to approaching things such as land acquisition.
Yeah.
That most of the time you can't fault them. You can't fault them because they actually apply standards that are higher than what Ugandan law provides. So it is going to be very difficult to sustain a claim of unfair compensation against an oil and gas company, because the kind of compensation they give is actually most of the time more than what the Ugandan law provide for, because they take into account so many other things.
Yeah.
In Uganda, when UNRWA is compensating you for your land, for a road, they only give you money for the value of your land and the standard disturbance allowance of sometimes 15%, sometimes 30%, depending on how long they want you to vacate.
Yeah.
But these companies go into things such as livelihood support, disability assistance. They map the stakeholders and see the vulnerable people, the widows, the child-led homes, the disabled, and they take into account all that. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult to catch them, but there's always a temptation to sue them, but I've not seen a person who succeeded against them. Environment, yes, there is always a tension between environmental protection and exploitation of natural resources. The two are not, they're not very, they are kind of exclusive, mutually exclusive. You want to take minerals out of the ground, but there's a forest. So what do? You want to take the minerals out, but there's a forest. So the other person is focusing on the forest, but is wearing a shoe. He came driving, using fuel. He seated in a car. He drove to the demonstration site in a car. He has a watch, he has a phone. He's using the phone to mobilize, but the phone is full of minerals.
Yeah.
So it's about the balance, to balance the interests, environmental, what we call sustainable development of mineral resources. Do not destroy the forest completely. If you can mitigate the destruction, we are happier. That's why you do environmental impact assessments before. So we have, our oil is in the national parks. National parks. So one would say, why are you going to drill oil in the national parks? So there is a tension between conservationists and government. Remember, all these are natural resources. So it's always a tension is there, but again, I have not seen so much success because oil companies also want to go to exploit resources in very, very environmentally sensitive places, because now doing these projects doesn't depend on you having only the license from government. You also need what we call a social license to operate, which is most of the time more important than your legal statutory license. Because if you don't have a social license, even you have a statutory one, you probably can't do your project because you're always facing resistance from the communities. So environment, social and governance, what the buzzword people talk about, ESG all the time, is a very big thing, not only for the companies, but also for now financiers who won't fund projects that are considered to be not environmentally friendly. Even buyers of end products. If you've heard of conflict minerals, where they say, oh, if your mineral is coming from this region, we're not buying except you have certified that you have gone through ABCD. So you can mine and you lack a market where to sell. because you are not compliant with the environment, social and governance standards. So if there are any, not all, I can't speak for all, but majority of serious extractive industry companies are very, very more sensitive to the environment than even the government. So there's those litigations there. But there's also a lot of anticipated litigation as we go into production phase to do with the tax, because now the oil will be out of the ground.
Yeah.
And now there is a lot of contestation of how much tax you pay now that you've gotten the oil out of the ground. So there's a lot of anticipated litigation there. And the lawyers should be excited because tax is not arbitrable as a matter of public policy in Uganda. So it's carved out always whenever they're negotiating. It's a tax, employment, environment, all these are carved out. But what I encourage lawyers to do is don't go in there to spoil projects, go there to facilitate. So when I hear somebody, yeah, let's go and look for who was not compensated and we sue, that is not the way. You will not be helping.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know whether they still teach law and development in law school.
Yeah.
Do they?
I
Law
hope
and
so.
development.
I remember it was always
in the first year.
First year.
But many people skipped. They don't want to
development studies. I remember we had it in year one. Development
some
studies.
called development studies.
You know,
I think when I did it was law and
development. Yeah.
How does law enable? Don't go there as a constraint.
Yeah.
a constraint of a lawyer who is saying there is no mining here. This is people's land. No. Find a way of facilitating the project to see that the landowner has been treated justly and the project is also progressing, because at the end of the day, you need these things to get out of the ground.
Sure.
As you come to protest, you came driving, you need fuel, you need the car tires, you need your phone. How are you going to support the economy in the world when you don't want the minerals to get out of the ground? So the opportunities are there, but the key, as I've said, is understand the industry very well and the players. Who are the actors?
Wow. Thank you very, very much. This takes us to our last segment. I want to recognize our usual listeners. Louis Kizito. Louis Kizito has written a lot, by the way, Dennis, about Forex and the contradict in the law and the duplication of services. So we are looking forward to hosting him next Thursday. You should listen in. He has done a lot of research and publication in that area. Louis, you're welcome. I now want to go to our last segment of this conversation, and I want to now focus on the questions that I have in my inbox. So you'll hold up a minute. Okay, somebody says, ask for me, Council Dennis, whether our dispute resolution mechanisms are fit for purpose, given the billions at stake in the industry. That's question number one. Of course, I'm sure this is a tech lawyer here. He says that ask Advocate Kusasira, how does the lack of a fully digital land registry affect title due diligence, and what legal tech solutions could help? They're taking new technologies. And I think let me merge all of them together so that we are able to look at them at once. This one, well, is telling us there is legal practice, you know, there is now a course in law and oil at undergraduate. I think we complained about that.
I don't know how much it can cover.
Yeah. So I think those are so far the questions, the two key questions there. The rest seem to be the same repetitions.
Dispute resolution, there are challenges, but as I said, it is very common. In fact, it's the norm for oil and gas disputes to be referred to arbitration, most especially those between government and the oil and gas companies. They are always referred to international arbitration. So there's some relief there. And also between companies, the large service providers who are European companies flying to do a service, they normally have their dispute resolution mechanism as arbitration international. But as I said, there are those areas of dispute that are localized, that are carved out of arbitration by government itself, like tax is one of them. Employment is another. Environment is another. Administrative law disputes is another. So a judicial review lawyer will be in business there. But they then face the same problem like any other litigator.
Yeah.
I have been in the commercial court on a dispute on tax for one of my clients, one of the oil companies that discovered the oil here, and that dispute has been in the commercial court for 13 years.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
It was decided just last year, and we are now in the Court of Appeal. So I'm still counting. You get me? So sometimes also the dispute will come in the angle of land dispute, because you cannot go and arbitrate land in London. So it's going to be a landowner suing, and I know that in some of the upstream projects there were those disputes where we could not access the land because we are in court, and the matter took so long. I think 4 years. So this delay projects. But what can we do? We rely on lawyers to be more receptive to mediation than litigation. So oil companies don't like litigation. If you're a litigation lawyer, they look at you with scorn because they don't like litigation. They like solutions that are quick. So to answer you, they are operating in the same, not so fit for purpose dispute resolution forum. The income tax tribunal is a bit quick, but again you clog at the commercial court when you come for appeals. After the decision of the tax tribunal, the dispute I'm talking about took less than a year to determine at the TAT level, but the appeal in the High Court took 13 years. In the Court of Appeal, the law has said the appeals shall be determined in 60 days from the date of filing. I'm now 1 year since I filed, since the appeal was filed against my client. It's 1 year. So that rule of 60 days is as if not working. It's written there, but it's not helpful. So that's really big. If disputes cannot be quickly resolved, it affects investment, it ties projects, it creates a bad image. But hopefully with the mediation being emphasized now, perhaps even at appellate level, maybe we may see a change. Oh, there is another one who talked about coordinates and what. Yeah, obviously, extracting natural resources requires access to land.
Yeah.
A license in the mining sector does not expropriate land.
Yeah.
It does not give me an automatic right to walk onto your land and do whatever I want to do. Similarly, the oil and gas, same thing. So it means I need both the license granted under the oil and gas or mining law And I also need what we call surface rights across mining and oil and gas. The surface rights, which come in form of land leases, like for ECOP. Yeah. We have land leases all the way from Kabale up to Mutukula. Wow. So you need to process titles all the way. So if you don't have a title for a segment of the pipeline, then you cannot proceed, because whoever is investing the money wants to be sure that you have secure corridor for the pipeline. If it's a mine, how are you going to take the minerals out except you are doing what we call underground mining and you don't care who is sitting on top of the land? But most of 80% of minerals are extracted via open pit. So you need access to land. Even if you're doing underground, you still access to land. You need to have an access road. You need to build, you're not going to build your offices under the ground. Yeah. So that can be a challenge, but somehow we manage. Whether technology can assist, I am really innocent about technology. I don't know much about it, but I believe it can.
Yeah. Thank you very, very much, Dennis. And I think for me, my take home here, Dennis places a critical call that the delays in decisions that affect high-level national projects like these ones, they come back to hurt us. I will tell you that this podcast is listened to by the policymakers. And clearly, everybody knows that a number of very big projects have been affected by sometimes sluggishness and or turnaround time in most of our decisions. And I think for me, you make not a call for the companies, but a national call. And I want to thank you for that.
Lawyers should not be part of the problem. Yeah. Lawyers should be part of the solution.
I don't know whether Dennis is sending a message to opposite counsel, but we'll leave it at that.
Lawyers should not be part of the problem.
Lawyers should not be part.
They should always be part of the solution.
Part of the solution. I think that's what
because once we realize that our courts are not working, and humanly, it's not possible to turn out cases quickly. Yeah. If we've realized that that is the problem, then lawyers should become part of the solution than problem. And it's possible. Because as I've told you, natural resources companies don't want to be in court. But if you come to court and you are a problem than a solution provider or facilitator, then it's a problem. You know, I have instances where someone is being advised by a lawyer, but your land has minerals. They have given you little money. Your land has minerals. And you excite the landowner, but instead of saying, you know, but under the law, the minerals and the land are separate. Yeah. The minerals are for government. Actually, they're not for government. They are for the public. They are for all of us, but vested in the government, in a trust for all of us. Yeah. So you can only be compensated for your land and developments on the land. But if you find a lawyer who wants to be part of the problem and a judge who wants to be part of the problem, then we're going to go through litigation for me to argue on an interpretation of Article 244, which is very clear. Yeah, I hear you. And you want a judgment on that. And when they say the minerals are not part of the land, you appeal. Have you seen appeals on that point? I saw an appeal on that point, and unfortunately it was by government. Now they were talking about construction minerals. I think they were talking about stone. And I think there was a compensation for stone, rocky land. Stone, my stone has been taken, it's being used to build a dam, but they have compensated me money which is less than the value of the stone. And I think the government was saying this is a mineral. Yes, it is a mineral, but it's vested in a landowner. So now there, it's the government which was being part of the problem. So we can do better as lawyers by always looking for solution, by always facilitating solution than causing problems.
Thank you very, very much, Dennis. As we come to the end of our conversation today, I want to just point out one or two questions. I'm going to unmute you, Louis. You can be able to ask your question. Mr. President, you'll be giving us a closing shot. So in the meantime, as Louis is coming through, I want to place one last question, which has been sent. You know, these are Lego Tech Dialogues. We try to promote digital transformation among lawyers. And one question which is from the public here, it says that data sovereignty, I'm here when you talk about sovereignty, the sovereignty bill comes in real quick. But data sovereignty and cybersecurity are emerging legal frontiers. Oil companies hold enormous amounts of sensitive geological, financial, and operational data. Is Uganda's ownership and digital assets in the petroleum sector and our legal framework equipped to handle disputes around ownership and digital assets in the petroleum sector? And what should lawyers be advising their clients right now from where you sit in that perspective?
I don't know much about data things. The only point I want to make is that all data developed, acquired during oil operations, during mining operations, belong to government. Okay. Doesn't belong to oil company, but it's confidential. So the only thing I know about data and my practice that the data belongs to government, the data is confidential. You cannot access it just like that. As to whether the law is protective, yes, you can't access this data, it's confidential. Commercial data, geological data is confidential. That is as far as I know. I am not a technology lawyer. I don't purport to be one.
You have already warned us against purporting to be oil and gas experts or whatever.
Yes, yeah,
so thank you very much. I think you have been able to clearly answer that. And I have two request speakers. We have Louis Kizito and Katikara Hannah. We'll start with you, Louis Kizito, then Katikara Hannah, and then we will be able to wind this up. Thank you very much. Louis, you can unmute yourself. You are loud and clear, Louis.
Thank you for hosting someone with vast experience, someone like Dennis. And I'm not an oil and gas expert, really. Whatever I'm going to ask may even appear to be superficial, but at least maybe his experience will help us with a few answers here and there. So, lately, I'm going to comment on three things. Now, the first one is, with the rise of blockchain technology, we are seeing a lot, and I know you're not a tech expert, but I think we can have this discussion going forward. With the rise of blockchain technology, we're seeing a lot of something called tokenization of real-world assets. That's a fancy way of saying, I'm going to get the gold in Uganda, I generate a token for it on the blockchain, and then that token is backed by real-world gold real world diamond. And in Uganda, I think it is picking up because I think, and in Ghana, I was talking to a colleague in Ghana just a few days ago, and one of the ways they want to create a secondary market for their minerals, especially the gold that they have that is all over the place, is by leveraging blockchain rails technology to create smart contracts that can generate tokens that can back the real world gold they have, that, and that token is redeemable. So I need to find out if, in his experience, that can work in Uganda, because a few companies, I don't want to mention them because some of them don't want to put their names out when they are really doing some of these projects, at least not at this stage. In Uganda, does it think that maybe doing tokenization of gold, now that Bank of Uganda is, I think, becoming serious about what the bullion system, I think, because now Bank of Uganda also is thinking of putting diversifying our reserves with gold. Okay, that will come with the complexities. That's one. And then secondly, it feeds into the first thing I've just asked about. I wanted him to comment about Bank of Uganda's move to add gold in our reserves, and why do I want his professional input, at least on the mineral called gold, due to his vast experience. African countries that have actually attempted to put gold as part of their reserves have found issues with LBMA certification, the London Bullion Market Association. So for your gold to be liquid, it has to meet certain standards. And I'm sure Bank of Uganda, I think they know this also. Kenya recently is now storing its gold in vaults that are LBMA certified in London. Of course, we know the London vaults beneath the Bank of England. I think the only African country which is keeping its gold on its shores, I think it's South Africa and maybe Ghana, the guys that have the LBMA certification. So if Bank of Uganda is going to go that route and we want to make our gold to plug into the mainstream financial architecture, the global financial architecture, does it think that we need to actually think ahead of ourselves, and maybe he can also advise Bank of Uganda, because I think ABMAC has those relationships, about LBMA certification, especially if we want to deal with things like counterparty risks, where your gold is stored in England, and you saw what happened, I think, to Venezuela 2 years ago. The Bank of England was storing their gold, and a judgment from I think it's the High Court in London did not recognize that regime. I think it was the Maduro regime, and they said, we're not going to give you your gold, yet it's theirs. And given that gold is an asset that, at least I'm talking about gold as a financial asset. Gold as a financial asset never settles. Now, there are very many claims on gold. We have paper gold, and the kind of claims we have on gold can never settle all those claims. And now you cannot risk having your gold stored in the Bank of England, where it can actually be leased. Well, though, without your permission, it could be leased. Even when they don't own it, those are Western countries. So I made this comment on the viability of having gold as I believe gold is a good asset to diversify our reserves, given why the world has been going and the US treasuries and how they've been able. I don't know what his comment is on, one, the readiness, and two, that LBMA certification, where we need to put our gold in vaults and storage systems that are globally recognized, so that we can avoid counterparty risks of someone else keeping our gold, and a judgment is passed because they don't recognize our Ugandan government, and you can't have that gold. Then lastly, I don't know if he has been following Dangote's pronouncements and visits lately. Dangote wants to build a refinery in East Africa, though I feel they are rushing, they are going ahead of themselves. I was talking to Dr. Muhumuza, and he told me a few years ago that he is against the refinery thing, at least in East Africa, because this continent, according to his studies, had about 35 refineries that have since closed. So I want his comment on whether a refinery in East Africa, even when it's going to get, because these refineries actually, they normally get even crude from elsewhere in the world just to meet the volumes that they are supposed to produce. And our markets being small, I don't know what his comment would be on an East African refinery, even when it is bankrolled by someone as experienced and largely connected like Dangote. So I wanted to find out if, in his view, a refinery is viable. And I also want to find out whether our break-even oil price can still sustain Uganda to make money from our oil. For a country to make money from oil, and I think Dennis knows this even more than me, there's something called a break-even price. The price below which the global price should not go, so that we, even with all the inputs and all the capital we are putting into this project of oil, we can still break even, in quotes. We can still get a return as a country. So I don't know, one, let him tell us about the break-even oil price and whether the current geopolitical realities will help us meet that break-even oil price and thrive when the oil starts flowing. So thank you, Tony, for giving me a chance, and I look forward to listening to Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
Louis.
Louis.
Over to you, Dennis.
Tokenization of gold. This is a new method of backing currency. Not currency. Gold has always been used as an asset to back currency. So instead of holding reserves in money, you hold it in gold or any other mineral that is of high value, but gold typically. If you look at the global gold usage, obviously about 49% is in jewelry, 5% in technology and industry, 22% only in central bank, and it has grown. In a few years ago, it was below 20% with the banks being used as an asset for reserves, and 24% investment, like you and I buying gold and holding it instead of putting money in the bank. But I have now begun to see, and what I've seen in Uganda recently is not even in the oil and gas, but it's in another sector that requires a lot of money, and the person financing is talking about having gold worth billion stored somewhere and certified, and is using that to leverage financing by bank and then do the transaction here. But it's worked elsewhere, so there's no reason why it shouldn't work here. Whether our government and our technocrats understand it very well is another thing altogether. For example, if you came here and you say you're an investor, and they say, show us that you have money, and you present these kind of things, are they going to understand them?
I hear you.
Or they will chase you away and they say you don't have money. So that's a challenge. I don't know, I need to talk to people in Bank of Uganda, but Bank of Uganda is not also the decision maker in all the sectors. Let's say it's a financial advisor for the government, perhaps they will sort this out. Central bank storing gold in Uganda, they want to go that direction because, as I've told you, it's increasing the percentage of gold usage in the globally. It's now 22%. Central banks should be in the 18s, meaning that most countries are going there. Why? Because the gold prices have been going up for a couple of years now without dropping. But gold in the Great Lakes region is a very problematic mineral because of the regime on conflict minerals. So you have to have a lot of documentation to trace the origin of this gold. There's a lot of trading going on. But I'm not practicing in the downstream side of mining because I can't confirm the source of the gold and trace it to a particular mine.
Yeah.
And yet, if I'm involved in that value chain, I'm responsible for the due diligence. So, sourcing gold from here and storing it Bank of Uganda, good idea. Challenge, what we call provenance. Can you prove that it's not linked to areas where rebels have taken over mines and mining and selling and buying arms? It's one of those that we have to think about. Refinery in the East Africa, it will be very unfair for me to sit here and say viable, not viable. Because what makes a project viable is a lot of things. Oil being present in the ground being only one of them. There's a tendency to look at these value addition things by just considering that you have the oil or the mineral. But there are so many things that determine viability of these things. But what I know is that refineries and then a process plant require volumes to scale, because their margins are normally very thin. So the smaller your refinery is, the more problematic
It
becomes. But there are other things like access to market for your product. Where are you going to sell? Because you are competing with product that is coming from everywhere in the world. So you can find a situation where what you've refined from the coast is expensive if you are selling it in Hoima because of the distance. But if you have a refinery in Hoima, what you are producing in Hoima is cheaper in Kampala, perhaps because of the distance. So it is not very wise for me to sit here and say the refinery proposed by Dangote is viable or not viable, or the one for Uganda is viable or not viable. But what I know is that these projects require scale, volumes, and they require what we call security of supply of what they are refining. So a refinery built at the coast enjoys the advantage of being able to source from wherever, versus a refinery built inland, which has sources only from one source, or if it can't source from that one source, it has to import the crude. So why other refineries have failed in Africa also is a very hypothetical question that I can't answer because I don't know the reason. Maybe markets, maybe management, maybe costs. It's very difficult to answer that. Ugandan oil breaking even is also a very, very difficult question. But why would someone be investing billions in a project that can't break even? I believe it can break even. That's why it's being invested in. Otherwise, it becomes uninvestable if it was not breaking even. But again, these things depend on markets. I told you that at one point, Ugandan oil was not viable when the price of oil was very low. If the price of oil ever falls to those levels, then we go back to what was the position before. But is it going to fall? Who knows? During COVID, what was the barrel? What was the barrel of oil costing? I heard it was cheaper than a burger. But that is a unique, because no one was buying oil.
Exactly.
The world was on closed, shut down. But now, the world continuously demands these things. Of course, amidst problems of climate change also affect, but oil is going to always be demanded. So I'm more optimistic. So I don't want to go into the pessimistic debate of viable, not viable for Uganda. I believe it is viable.
Thank you very, very much, Dennis. We can't go any further beyond this. And we just want to wind up with our very, very last question. Dennis, this is a question we pose to every panelist we host here. And the question is, what does that young lawyer who wants to replace the Dennis Kosasira have to do to become a Dennis Kosasira?
The young lawyer should become himself, not Dennis. I want people to be better than me. He should become himself in their own way. Don't try to become Dennis, because you may not become Dennis. And the opportunities Dennis had may not be similar to what you can have. You can even have better. So, but there is one path that I think is undisputed, is that you have to specialize. Try to specialize. It's very difficult to make it if you are in the crowd. You need to find something that can distinguish you from the crowd as a young lawyer, because that's what I did when I was a young lawyer. Look at an area which people are not, no one can claim to know it better. All of you are on a clean slate, and start to run, and run faster than anyone else. Technology is one of them. Climate change is another. Regional treaties and trade is another. Don't try to follow into Dennis's footsteps, because the world of Dennis has changed a lot. The environment is probably different. I finished my master's degree in 2008, no, 2010. And when was the Paris Agreement signed? The Paris Agreement is an agreement on climate change. We used to have the Kyoto Protocol and the UN Convention on Climate Change. But the one that is really biting is the Paris Agreement, which sets stringent targets. Not set stringent targets, requires states to set targets of how they're going to contribute to curbing the emission of greenhouse gases. And the target is to phase out fossil fuels, one of them being oil and gas, particularly crude oil. Gas, somehow, but crude oil, coal. Now, how can I advise you to go and focus so much on oil and gas when there is that threat also? I'm not saying it's going to be extinct. We are going to need oil and gas, but why don't you look at the other areas that are, like climate change is a very good area to look at, and climate financing, carbon trading. These which people are not doing, and no one can tell you that they are experienced in them, however old they are. Technology. Go there, specialize, and be very, 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 keen on your goal, and be able to set yourself apart from the crowd, because you are too many lawyers in a very small economy. You're not going to make it if you are not distinguishable. And you're not going to distinguish yourself by being the top litigator. It won't work, because you're trying to speed in the traffic jam. There's a backlog of cases. Even if you're very good at litigation, you cannot do much. But if you can go into areas that are emerging and be very good at them, that is very good. And go and study them. Don't just say, I want to be, I have seen many people say, now me from today, I'm a tax lawyer. Well, you can work at it, by the way.
Yeah.
Some of the teachers who taught me at the master's level did not have a master's degree in mining law and policy, but they had done years.
Yeah.
But it will take you a longer time. Me, I told you I had to leapfrog my father, Eli Karuhanga, who I call my father because he's the grandfather of, but he's Ellison, my friend Ellison's father.
Yeah.
But the only way I could leapfrog him is by getting what he didn't have, a master's degree in an area that I want to focus on. And he was focusing much on oil and gas, and me, I want to focus on both oil and gas and mining and power. So I broadened. And then I could ably, although he's still better than me, but I can at least compete.
Wow.
But he's now an old man, probably retired. But what a wonderful man. So that's all my advice I can give. Specialize.
Wow. What a mentorship session it has been. I am tempted for gender balance to allow Katikara Hannah in 1 minute to ask a question. I can't hold senior advocate here any longer. Please, Katikara Alan, open your mic and ask that burning question.
All right. My question to you, Councillor Dennis, you mentioned earlier that, of course, oil and gas is a renewable,
non-renewable.
It's a non-renewable resource. That's a no-brainer. So, in light of that long-term risk of perhaps resource depletion, how can a lawyer safeguard themselves in their practice when it comes to that? And additionally, would you advise a young lawyer, maybe someone who's fresh out of school, to specialize that early and deeply in oil and gas law? What are the cons and pros of that kind of specializing early before maybe before let me say practicing for like 5 years plus, fresh out and specializing in oil and gas? Is it dangerous? Would it be dangerous on my part?
Thank you, Katikara. And then Wangapi. Those are going to be our closing questions. So Wangapi, go ahead and ask your questions so that they would handle them at once.
Katikara, look, the skills in the oil and gas practice of law can be replicated. So don't worry about the non-renewable nature of oil and gas, because you can replicate what you learn there. One of the skills that you hone in oil and gas practice is negotiation. In very high level transactions with government for private sector. So you can replicate your negotiation skill into roads, into minerals, into other things, telecom. You have project finance, financing projects on the basis of their cash flow as opposed to on the basis of how rich the developer is. You look at cash flow and say, because of that cash flow, I'm going to give you the money. But what the money they are giving you is too much compared even to what you are developing. Even if they sold what you are developing, if you defaulted, they can't recover the money. But if you manage to do the project and the cash flow materializes the way it was predicted in terms of amount, timing, and certainty, then that project, which looks small, can generate a lot of cash flow. So that skill of structuring projects and making sure you plug all risks that would affect the amount, timing, certainty, can be replicated to do other projects like toll roads. You've heard of the expressway?
Yeah.
It's not financed on a cash flow because it was risky, but typically toll projects are financed on what we call non-recourse or limited recourse. You give me the money, but don't look at me.
Yeah.
Let us all look at the cash flow. So what is the oil and gas or projects lawyer like me do? Look at all risks that can affect the timing, that can affect the amount, that can affect the certainty of this cash flow, and therefore impact the lender in receiving their money the way they want to receive it. So those skills are unique and they are transferable. You can replicate them for other things. And that's why I'd say, if you want to specialize early, I specialized early. So why shouldn't you? It's very difficult to do a master's degree after practicing for 5 years, I can tell you.
True that.
Because you have a family, the vigor. How many of you dream when you're sleeping and you dream? For me, it happens to me a lot. They have thrown me in an exam. You get these kind of dreams. Yeah, and you have forgotten the pencil, or you didn't read at all.
Those nightmares would come after your DC really for some time.
Yeah, I still get them. So, the earlier you do your master as a young lawyer, the better. But the question is choosing the right one.
Yeah.
If you wait, and for ladies it's even worse, because no ladies have what we call, they have the challenges of being mother.
Yeah.
So you're a mother, now you can't go. You have a family.
Yeah.
It's difficult. I studied with colleagues who are parents, and I tell you it was difficult. So nobody should mislead you that first work a bit, and it's very difficult. But just choose, and it's not very easy, very difficult to make up your mind. Just look at areas that are emerging. Oil and gas is not a very big employer, by the way. That's why, yeah, I did it, but maybe the timing was also very, very good for me.
Yeah.
Right now, I don't know how many pipelines are going to be built again, and when. Okay, because most of the facilities in these areas are what we call natural monopolies. If I'm doing a dam, you can do as many dams as waterfalls you have that can generate power, but if you're doing transmission lines, there's only going to be one transmission line. If I've done it, it's done, finished.
Irrespective of the feeders.
Yeah, so the pipeline, done, finished. So, you may do the degree and maybe your timing is not the right one. The companies have come here, they're already up and running, and you're just coming in. And they have their lawyers. And they're not about to fire them, maybe. So, penetrating is very difficult. That's why I'm talking about mining as opposed to oil and gas.
Yeah.
Because how many oil and gas players do you have here? Like the licensees, there are 2.
Basically.
How many lawyers are we?
Over 3,000, over 4,000 now.
If only 20 of us were oil and gas lawyers, we would still struggle.
Exactly.
But with mining, there are very many people applying for license, many companies, some of them even local. And even I've told you about the mushrooming concrete brick. What are they using? Stone dust. Whose? Landowner stone. Quarries. But typically mining will give you more opportunity to practice in this space than oil and gas, because oil and gas, the players are too few and the transactions are not frequent. They're not as frequent. Mining, the transactions are quite frequent. Person applies for a license, does something with it, then they sell it, another one buys it, does something, then they sell it. Oil and gas is not very common.
Yeah.
But also, don't focus so much on oil and gas. Look at other areas as well. Entertainment law, technology, climate change, regional trade.
Thank you very, very much, Dennis. We can't go beyond this. And Katikara, I hope Dennis has been very, very helpful to you. And for me, my take home is there are a number of emerging areas. And if you're looking at the natural resources industry, focus on mining. It is broader and bigger. And don't be deceived by Barry. I know that you don't go for that master's degree now, first practice. I promise you it is the right time to shoot. I want to thank everybody who has joined us today, and I want to give special thanks to Dennis Kusasira. We don't take your time for granted. There are very few Dennises in this country, and I can tell you, you have been very, very resourceful. And don't get tired of us. Please keep sharing this knowledge. And I also want to inform the public that Dennis decided to, use his own fuel, and that shows how much he loves us. 2 hours is a lot of time when you are talking to a lawyer who represents ECOP, where he bills per hour. So you can know how many dollars you have burnt today. Thank you very much for donating to us those dollars you have billed otherwise. Thank you very much, our listeners, and thank you for everybody. My friend Mudaki Julius, thank you for tuning in, and all the other members, thank you. We can't thank you more than that. May the God bless you, and good night.